Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started talking about socialization today, chapter 4, and the intro to sociology. Once again, this is Jerry Logan, Professor Logan, wanting to talk to you today about the topic of socialization. So, we're going to go ahead and get started from a current slide. Uh, Definition of socialization. Socialization. Keywords in here, if you look at them, it's a continuing. I mean, this is ongoing. It's not a one-time thing. It's continuing. Process, I mean, there are different steps you go through. So it's not a one-time thing. It's a continuing process. So when you think about socialization, remember that you have a continuing process going on, not a one-time thing. Socialization, if you look at the definition or the name socialization, the key word that stands in there is socializing. So you socialize a person. Uh, this is a process, a continual process where an individual acquires a personal identity. So you're learning to develop an identity. Going to George Herbert Mead, that you're not born with a self. You have to learn to identify with an identity over a period of time. But in the process of socialization, you learn the norms, expectations of right behavior, values, behavior, and social skills appropriate to his or her social position. So let that marinate for a minute. Think about that definition and continue a process. An individual, you acquire personal identity, and in a society or culture, there are norms, values, behavior, and you learn social skills. But it's appropriate to his or her social position, so you have to understand your social position and know how to apply these skills, social skills. Again, the process, a process by which an individual internalizes the values, beliefs, and norms of a given society and learn to function as members of that society. So at that point, when you're learning to function as a member of a society, the society is already structured. So there's values, beliefs, and norms that are already in place. And then the thing about it is you have to learn to participate and be a member of that society. However, through the socialization process, if you think about an infant, a baby from birth, they don't know anything. So you have a newborn baby when you all start having kids, or those who have experienced having kids, or younger siblings that you help raise up, or relatives. Babies have no identity. They have no clue to what's going on as far as the social structure of a society. So therefore, it is your responsibility to say, you know what? Currently, I have a 19-year-old daughter, and I want to say, hey, as a baby, I have to make sure, and I've socialized my child to not only to know the norms and culture, values, and beliefs and the rules of just my family, our culture, also to learn the rules of society so she can be a functioning member of society. But she has to go through the socialization process so that she's able to learn what it is to be a member of the family and then also to be a member of society. Personality. A person's fairly consistent patterns of thinking, feeling, and acting built through their own internalization. So therefore, individual learns how to have a personality. As my mother would say, that if a 2-year-old, that child has been here before. It's because of their personality and the way they behave. So at some point, as you think about if you're growing up, if you're watching little children or growing up yourself, you think about what did I learn my personality from? And it's built through the internalization through a process that we'll be talking about today. Excuse me. So human development, nature, and nurture. Biological science is saying the role of nature. It led human behavior is instinctive, simply our nature. So that is just being a human is instinctive. This is just what we do naturally. Social sciences talk about the role of nurture. Behaviorism. Behavior is not instinctive, but it's learned. Nurture shapes human behavior. Nurture is our nature. I use the example of a feral child, spelled Feral, feral child, which is a child who has been raised, allegedly, is supposed to have been raised by animals. So if you take that into consideration, just say there's a child who's from newborn, who's been raised by animals up to 2 or 3 years old. at that point, if they had no contact with humans and all they had been around wolves or bears or whatever the type of animal they were raised by, would that child be doing the behavior of what they observed from the animal, or would they be instinctively learn as nature kicks in, instinctively their behavior is going to be that of a human when it looks at as far as everyday living skills. So certain animals, let's say a wolf or something, might see a body of water and they just start licking up the water, just to drink it. So with this 2-year-old child who's been raised by animals, would that child instinctively say, no, that's not what I do because you're an animal that does this and I'm a human. So therefore I need a cup or something, grab my hands and drink. Is that's what I do as a human instinctively? Or is this child going to say and do as the animal because they have watched this child behavior, they watch this animal's behavior and they repeat what they do. So with this child say, okay, I've been watching for 2 years that this is how I'm supposed to drink and this is what they've been continuing to do. Or the child eat the food just by biting with their teeth and gnawing at it instead of saying, no, that's not as a human what I do. So therefore, when we've been socialized by an animal, sort of say that we do what they do, and it's not just instinctively saying, no, that's not why my food's supposed to be cooked. I need a fork, knife, I need to eat it with my hands a certain way. But the socialization process is huge because if you look at infants and babies are always, and little kids are always watching what you do. So therefore, your job is to socialize children to be a functioning member of society. So human infants display various reflexes, biologically based behavior patterns that enhance survival. So sucking reflex, as you see in the first picture here, if you have a baby, they just naturally put a bottle on their face, they know how to nurture from there. That's just a natural biological reflex. Grasping, babies quick to grab you, hold you, and then immoral reflexes when they just jump. You make a noise or a sound, and sometimes kids react to it. And these are some of the biologically based behavior patterns for human infants. We're going to get into some of the sociologists. This is Socialization to the Self and Mind. If you look at Charles Horton Cooley, 1864 to 1929, we talked about him briefly in Chapter 1 as the symbolic interactionist. And you all remember the symbolic interactionists, they look at face-to-face interaction and its use of symbols on a micro level. Charles Cooley developed the looking glass self. So make sure you are familiar with the looking glass self. To get more into that, the looking glass self refers to the process, again, the word process, by which our self develops through internalizing others' reactions to us. So the looking glass self contains the three elements. Number one, we imagine how we appear to those around us. And just put yourself in the shoes and think about it, even if you were younger, when you were in the process of developing yourself, you were watching how other people reacted to you. So if we look at the looking glass self, as Charles Cooley explains, the three elements, first we imagine how we appear to those around us. So we interpret their reaction to us. Number two, we interpret others' reactions. And number three, we develop a self-concept. When I look at this looking glass self and the three elements from Charles Cooley, I look at the fact, just put an example, fits it to the new, if you go, a child goes to a new school, and just say if I'm this little kid, and not me personally, but if I'm this kid, I say to myself, I want some respect, I just portray myself to be a bully. But I'm a bigger kid, so number one, I'm imagine how I appear to those around me. Do I look intimidated? Do the kids look at me and say, okay, I'm fearful of him because of his size, and maybe if I mean mug, I'm gonna look tough at him. At some point, will I be able to intimidate them? So I'm gonna put on this persona. I'm this tough guy. I'm gonna put mean mug, look at people mad, try to fear them, and one, I'm gonna imagine how I appear to those around me. The second thing to go along with Charles Cooley looking glass self as the three elements is number two, as this bully, I'm going to interpret others' reactions. So am I going to say, man, am I going to get a reaction out of people if I try to boss them around or telling them to do something or move out my way? Are they responding to that in a fearful manner? And number three, we develop a self-concept. So at that point, if I've noticed that 1 and 2 is working for me as a bully, then the next day I know I developed this self-concept and say, okay, well, this is who I am. I am this person. I disagree with bullying. I think it's the worst thing that for a young person to do. I'm just using it as an example, and it can also apply to someone who appears to be, let me be the comedian of the class or a so-called class clown. Imagine how I appear to those around me. If I crack a little jokes, I interpret their reaction, everybody's laughing, and then I'm going to develop this self-concept that I'm going to be this funny guy. So make sure you are familiar with Charles Cooley's Looking Glass Self. Keep skipping, apologize. George Herbert Mead, we briefly talked about him before, as also a symbolic interactionist, 1863 to 1931. Now, he pointed out how important play is in developing a self. He says, as we play with others, we learn to take the role of the other. What I look about how important play is, you look about kids, when their imaginary plan is the imaginary friend, and people say, well, that's a good thing because this child is developing their imagination. They have this imaginary friend with them. Also, when they used to play, they take the role of the other person. And I remember long ago, I was able to, for the first time really in my early adult years, saw little girls who were, it's like a bunch of cousins, maybe about 5, 6, 7, 8 years old. They were little girls. And what they did was they went into, one of the girls went into her mom's closet in her bedroom and took out the shoes. The girls, all the girls, like 4 or 5 girls, they took out the shoes, her makeup, not her makeup, her jewelry, her hats, her purse, and they would put it on. So little girls would walk in the shoes, put on their hats, put the purse around there, and put the jewelry on, and they would just walk around. And I was like, wait a minute, hold on, they're moving too fast, wait a minute. And then the young lady explained to me, she was like, no, my daughter and her friends and her relatives, this is how they play. They learn in the role of being an adult by watching her. So this is just one of the examples that I use for how play is important, how we learn to take the other. We'll also talk about the importance of team sports as well. George Herbert Mead. Now the self is the individual identity of a person as perceived by the same person. It is the unique human capacity of being able to see ourselves from the outside, the views we internalize how others see us. Now, when you take the role of the other person, you put yourself in someone else's shoes. You understand how someone else feels and thinks, so you anticipate how that person would act. So therefore, people say, well, put yourself in my shoes. And in a way, you take that role and say, okay, well, now I'm this person. How would I react? What would I think? So at some point, you learn to develop and anticipate how that person is going to act. I remember the artist Joe, probably before a lot of y'all's time, had a song. He put a song out called "What If a Woman," and he described in a role like the woman was doing the behavior and characteristics of a man who was neglecting her and not treating her right, staying out late. And so he put the scenario and said, well, what if a woman was to come in late at night, always say she's hanging with her friends, and do the same characteristics of this so-called boyfriend? And it's like, what if a woman was just like you? How would you perceive it? So when you put yourself in that person's shoes and say, well, no, I wouldn't like that. So now you anticipate, how the person will act. And at some point, when you put yourself in someone else's shoes and you take the role of the other person, you just began to learn how important it is to be conscious of how someone else is feeling and how they think. George Herbert Mead said the self has two parts, the I and the me. The I is the subject, as the self as the subject. So both of them are the self. The I is the self as the subject, the active, spontaneous, creative part of the self. The me is the self as the object. It is made up of attitudes we internalize from our interactions with others. So over a period of time, you learn the self, the me is the self, attitudes, as we talked about with Cooley mentioned, we internalize for our interactions with other people. Imitation play and games are important components of childhood development. So when you imitating someone, you're learning about that role. When you play in games and stuff like that. So when you play team sports, high school, briefly I played football. So I played offense and I played defense. And so me knowing that the role of the quarterback or role at the role of the wide receiver, the formations. So when I switched from offense to defense, I knew the role of the other person. I said, okay, this is the quarterback's looking over here. The quarterback's calling the audible. They bring in three wide out receivers. Now they have two tight ends. They're in the I formation. So I'm learning as you take the role of the other person in the sense that you're anticipating what they want to do or they're about to do. So team sports and playing games are very important for kids to be socialized. One of the things with team games and team sports is that they have to learn to get along with the other person. They have to learn the rules and play by the rules. So the significant other is an individual who significantly influences someone else. So this is individual significantly. So this is maybe someone who you know, who you had contact with. As a male side, there's my father and grandfather and uncles who influenced me on the male side, and I have role models positive as my mom, my grandmothers, with aunts who played a role also as an individual who significantly influences someone's life. Now, the generalized others, internalized sense of the total expectations of whether we've encountered those people or places before. So I look at generalized others can be someone that you watched on TV. I know growing up, someone may not have a father figure, but there was a television character of a man who plays that father figure role, or this person who played a mother role or a grandparent role. So we look at this person as a generalized others, whether we met them or encountered them or not, but we can be influenced us in our socialization process. So George Herbert Mead said there are 5 stages in which we learn to take the role of the other. Definitely got to know this one. The self is not there at birth. The self is not there at birth. Infants only know the I. So make sure you're familiar with that. George Herbert Mead says that there's not there at birth. Kids learn more about themselves as they become socialized and develop more of a personality. The self only develops, number 2, the self only develops with your social experiences. Number 3, social experience is the exchange of symbols. Number 4, seeking meaning leads people to imagine others people's intentions. And number 5, understanding intention requires imagining a situation from the other's point of view. So make sure you're familiar with these 5 stages when we learn to take up the role of the other person. Anticipatory socialization. Key word in there is anticipate. You are learning to play a role before entering. It's a process of learning in advance and anticipate a future role or status. The television can play that role if you're learning, or movies. If I want to be in this particular future role or status, we'll talk about status a little bit later. You learn to play that role before you enter it. And we get to anticipatory socialization. Indirectly, we are socializing kids into these gender roles, and we're learning from television and media, parents of learning in advance and anticipate a future role or status, because a lot of you all will have the status of being a spouse, husband or wife, father or mother, job titles. So we'll talk about status a little bit later. But make sure you're familiar with anticipate socialization. Now, the life course, the sociological significance of the life course, we look at several things as social factors which influence our life course. Social location, our class. Social class is huge based upon our social class where we're at. If you grew up in this middle class, upper class, lower class, rich, poor, it makes it different. Your gender location, your social location, your gender has a role. Race and ethnicity is also highly significant. Now, your experience of society's events will be similar to that of people who share your location, but different from that of the people who do not. So, if you raised like I grew up in the poverty area of the South Side of Chicago, some people who had a more affluent in a suburban area may not experience the same things I've had seen with gangs and drug activity in the neighborhood, where there was a lot of violence going on, street crimes were committed. But if someone else who has a very affluent background where none of that stuff was present. They're in a gated community or a very safe community where a lot of these things do not take place. They may not share the same views and viewpoints that I've with me growing up and the social events in my life. Individual factors such as your health or marrying early or entering college late can throw you off your life course, which is so-called out of sequence. I mean, there's the socialization, high school. Some cultures go straight to college. Some cultures focus on you marrying at an early age. A lot of people who delayed going to college so they can take time to take care of their kids who they had. So I have a lot of my students who went back to school years later, 18, 20 years later, and say, hey, I devoted my life to taking care of my kids. I got out of college, I stopped college. Therefore, this is a time for me to go back because my kids are grown now. And so now let me focus on my life. And that's a great thing as far as parents who have taken that role. And I congratulate anyone going back to school. Never see entering college late as it can be considered as out of sequence because your life course. However, as long as you're back, that's a beautiful thing. Sometimes people have health problems and they come back to school, or if they've been taking care of a family member or spouse. Very important. I just congratulate and compliment and commend people who have decided to go back to college, and knowing that the college environment will be very supportive of you, your classmates, and me as well, and all your professors that you have. Now, socialization through the life course. The life course is the stages of our life as we go from birth to death. Childhood is from birth to about age 12. A lot of us gone past that. It's been about 100 years ago since I've been that age. However, the childhood stage is where you're learning to be in the child's place. When we go back to your learning your social status and social standings and your social role, as we mentioned in the definition of socialization. So you think back, man, as a baby up to 12 years old, I've learned a lot since being a baby and 12 years old. That's a crucial life stage in which kids are pretty much dependent on their parents for everything. So as people who become future parents, just think about what your future childhood, how you want that to be from them, because they're totally dependent on some form of adult supervision, finance, everything, protection, everything. Adolescence, ages 13 to 17, is a social invention, they say, not a natural age division. Adolescence was coined to indicate this new stage in life, one that has become renowned for uncertainty, rebellion, and inner turmoil. So now you got this teenager, as I see, 13 and 17, which a whole lot goes on in their life, transitioning from elementary education to high school to eventually completing high school. So if you think back, when I was 13 and 17, some of y'all, that was last year, that's 18. But if you think about the stages, wow, when I was 13, how much I've learned and how much I've grown, just imagine when you get up to my age of 50 years old and you say, wow, I've been through a lot. Transitional adulthood, a lot of you all are 18 to 29 years old. It's a term that refers to a period of following high school when young adults, they stated, have not yet taken on the responsibilities ordinarily associated with adulthood, as they call adultolescence. Being 18 to 29 is crucial age. There's a lot going on. A lot of people, and not individually, but a lot of people between 18 and 29 have completed college, got into their career. Between 18 and 29, a lot of people got married. Between 18 and 29, excuse the dogs, 18 and 29 had children. So I had my daughter when I was 30 years old. I was married at 29. I had my daughter at 30. 18 years old, I couldn't imagine that. I just knew one day I wanted to be a great father to my child and have her live in a great environment where she can thrive and do well. So 18, a lot of 18-year-old guys I talked to, 18-year-old young ladies that said, oh no, I'm not thinking about marriage, no kids, none of that. And then you look up 29, they married with a child, completed school, or not even necessarily married or have children, however they want it to be, that's their life. But it's just a big stage to think about, and that's why I have students let me know, how would you feel from 18 and what is your future? Always look towards your future. Don't just look at 18 and 29. Look beyond there. as far as your life. And then you get into the middle years, which I'm at between 30 and 65, and even at 50 years old, I'm still like preparing for 65 years old. And I know it's not that far, but at the same time, I have to look at for retirement stage when you get in the older years, about 65 and on. There's a transitional older years and emerging stage of life, of course, between retirement and when people are considered old. Some of my students say old people, they say when people are 40 or 50. One of my students said, man, you 48, 49 years old, man, you got one foot in the grave, old people. So I kind of laugh about that because I still remember myself at 18 years old, but I'm blessed to be able to make it at this age and to continue on more each day. So I tell young people, look forward to being 65, 75 years old in the later older years, the age of 75 and on, and put something for retirement, put something if you have children set aside for them. It's a lot of planning, but keep in mind that that's where you want to be one day at that age. Hopefully, we all can make it to the age of 75, and then also show respect to people who are 75, 65 years old, as you all call old people. Let's show them respect, and let's also remember that they were once 18 years of age, and learn as much as we can from them, as I'm still learning from people who are older than me. Gender. Gender is the behaviors and attitudes that a society consider proper for its males and females, masculinity or femininity. When I talk to students about gender, sex is what you are born with. You're either born male or female. However, at the same time, we can choose our gender. You can choose it. But it is the behaviors and attitudes that a society consider proper for its males and females, considering what society is, masculinity and femininity. Now, with gender socialization, we already know what socialization is. I done told you all about that. So let's look at gender socialization. You're learning society's gender map, the parts set out in life, the parts in life set out for us because we're male or female. And our gender roles are set of behavioral norms ensure that one's company has a status as a male or female. I talk to my students in regarding gender roles, gender and gender socialization, and understanding that stuff starts at birth, before even child is even born. I mean, think about the gender reveal parties that they're doing now. Blue for boys, pink for girls, or something like that. If we reverse the roles and just say in the gender reveal party, a safe one, let's do it safely if you do one, and the color come out pink, without even stating that everybody can say, oh, it's a girl. And you can say, no, that's my son, it's a boy. And like, why has he got pink? That's a girl color. Because we've been socialized to believe that this is a girl's color. And I felt guilty to that because when I was 29, 30 years old, I was like, oh, my daughter, she's going to have pink. Everything's going to be pink because she's a girl. And not even realizing that we have been socialized to that role, that a color does not create a child's masculinity and femininity at all. It's just that we have been socialized to be that way. So I posed the question. I say, well, what if you come home, you know, and your family member, just say your mother-in-law or your mom decides to paint your son's newborn. You're coming from the hospital and your newborn son, and she decides to paint that room pink. And some of my students will say, oh, no, I can't do that. That's a boy. You got to change that color. He a boy. You can't do that. You know, or if some people say, oh, I don't care. But then what would their grandfather say? What would their uncle say? Oh, that's a boy. He can't be doing that. You got to change that. It's not, and don't look at it as a question of whether this person's sexual preference. It's none of our business, and it's everybody, whoever you decide to date and marry is your business and your choice. And it is okay. We question masculinity and femininity at some point through gender socialization based upon male or female because we have been socialized to think and believe that way. That this is masculine, this is for a boy, this is for a girl. And I'll use the example when we look at gender roles is what are some of the gifts that we give little girls? And what do we give little boys? Little girl, we give them a baby alive. I don't know if that's the title for it now. Little girls get baby dolls. And with these baby dolls, they feed them, they change them, they clothe them, all kind of things as if they were being prepared to be able to take care of this baby. But if you give that same little baby doll to this little boy, then we question, oh, he's a boy. He shouldn't be playing with no dolls. because that's not considered masculine, and we have been socialized to believe that. If we also take a look at what are some of the other gifts we give little girls, we give them kitchenette sets, so they're in the kitchen cooking. We give a little girl toy vacuum cleaners. We get them little makeup things so they can do the little doll's hair and stuff like that. Fashion with clothes, and these are so-called stuff you give little girls. And I'm not saying everybody, but I'll just say if 1,000, 10,000 people as a whole, and what is being marketed in society through advertisement, what is it saying? It's like, okay, if you want to sell a baby doll with this lifelike features of an infant, we're going to market that to sell to little girls. But you don't turn around and say, oh, well, we're going to sell it to little boys, because part of our gender socialization and expectation of a gender role of what accompanies as a male or female, this is not what we do for little boys. So what are some of the toys that we give little boys? Action figures, sports, football, basketball, baseball, baseball bat. We give them building blocks so they're able to build things, toy cars, they get tool sets. So therefore, those are so-called boys' toys. And sometimes the girls can play with that as well, which is okay. And I'm not questioning that, but I'm just trying to lead to an example, is that we're giving these toys to kids and we are actually socializing them into their gender role of being male or female. So this little girl who has the kitchenette set, who has this little baby doll which she's changing, she has this vacuum cleaning, we're socializing her into a gender role that consistently has been out through years of the expectations of what it is to be a female. Not on a professional level at this point. I'll talk about that later in sex and gender. But what is the expectations of the girls? And then for boys, building blocks, tool sets. He should be able to be socialized into the role of being a male because they have toy guns. And so he's a protector. And there's something you build with. He's a provider. He has these tools and he has this common knowledge of this is what's supposed to happen to boys as they grow up into a man. And I kind of look at it now as adults. Boys, young men, we're expected, and this is different. Let's not get into what's boys and girls, but young boys are expected to know certain things at a young age. And they have been socialized, and they should have been socialized according to certain societies and culture that my father used to always say, well, look, you're going to learn how to cut grass. You're going to be taking out garbage when you get a home. Woman doesn't do that stuff. Fixing cars, it is your role to fix a car. When something broke, you're supposed to fix it. And I had been socialized into that gender role of when I was a little kid, my father, when I was 5, 6 years old, when the men were out there working out cars, I don't care how cold it was or how hot it was, I was out there with them. He said, you're going to learn as a way to be able to fix a car as a man. And I rarely see was guys like, I'm going to put my daughter out here and teach her how to shovel snow at 2 o'clock in the morning when it's 0 degrees, or I'm going to teach her to be up under the hood of a car. They're doing it now, but that is so-called expectation for boys, that we want them, they should know how to do. So you just kind of look into different examples. I mean, a lot of stuff is gender neutral with the girls and learn, because I've taught my daughter, say, hey, I would love to teach my daughter how to work on a car. Everything I do, I have no son, so I teach my daughter to be gender neutral as far as learning different things, but yet I felt guilty years ago growing up because I bought her these feminine girl toys because that's what she wanted, but I never discouraged her from saying, oh, I want a video game that, and I'll talk about that in a moment, that a violent video game that's anything that she's growing up, or a play game or something that's so-called boys. I never discouraged her from that. And boys should never be discouraged, in my opinion, from learning things like how to clean up a house, how to be in the kitchen. My mother at a young age taught me how to cook, how to clean up, everything. So she had me in the kitchen learning, say, okay, you got to learn how to cook because one day you're going to be on your own. So I like we have a traditional gender roles as the expectation, like, oh, it's a boy, he can't play with dolls. No, he's not supposed to be a jump rope. He's supposed to be out there playing football. He's supposed to play sports. And if you have a little girl, oh, my little daughter can throw the football. But my son can't. He's a boy. He's supposed to. It's some of the quotes and things that they say. Even when playing sports, things like that, you running, and a little boy, one time this guy had his son out there, was playing football, junior league, and his son was running, and he got hit. And his son got up crying, And the coach was like, "Get up, you're a boy, get up, quit crying." I mean, a little boy could have had internal bleeding. We didn't know. But at the same time, you're a boy, get up, shake it off, shake it off. You're supposed to be tough. However, if our little girl, some of us, my little girl falls, oh, come here, she crying, we want to hug her. But at the same time, our role is, let's take this boy and it's almost like, just shake it off, you'll be okay, run it off. They used to tell me when I was a little boy. I got hurt playing football, get up, man, shake it off, run it off. There's no crying in sports for a boy, no. You cry if you celebrate and win a championship, if we see. But at the same time, we have been socialized into that role of a man. No, run it off, run it off. Don't sit back and cry. You all right? You sitting there like, oh, but it hurts. Hurts like hell. You're like, no, man, you be all right. You're a boy. A little girl, oh, give me a little girl and pick her up. And it's this expectations of how boys are supposed to be tough, and the nurturing part has to take place. So people raise and socialize your children how you feel fit. Do not look at just what society standards of gender. It's your child. You raise the child how you want to. We also look at the role of the mass media plays not only in gender socialization, but through just socialization, period. Now remember, the mass media is a means of delivering impersonal communication to a vast audience. It introduces people to ideas and images that reflect the larger society and the entire world. So we just look at, just say, United States, advertising, and just going to start with that we are teaching gender through advertising. If you have a minivan with all these different compartments that you fold the seat down and you pick this up, you have this minivan, and it's not me personally, I'm just looking at it as, who are they advertising it to? Is it to this so-called soccer mom? There's a commercial of her getting out. She got the boys, and they running out. There's plenty of room for all the boys to get out. Here's all the equipment, and that's who you're going to market to. Not to this guy, this rugged guy with no kids driving a minivan, because oh no, that's not his target. You know, advertising target. We're going to target stuff like, if I'm trying to sell this big F-150, and I have to sell it to this sell it to this so-called soccer mom, and she's like, oh, I don't need this. Because I'm not throwing my boys in the back of no pickup truck. No. I only have like 2 seats in the cab in the back, so to say. I don't have room. So they're not going to market to that based upon the gender. They're going to look at this man. It won't be maybe the Wall Street guy with the suit on. I'm going to market an F-150 to him. But there's this guy out there in the woods. The truck is riding over and through the woods and getting muddy and stuff. And this guy, a big masculine guy, carrying a big log on his shoulders, and he's throwing a log on the back of the truck. So they're going to advertise it based upon the gender, what's considered proper for males and females. Dos Equis had the commercial about the most interesting man in the world, and this man did everything. So it targets your mind of thinking, okay, when I think about Beard is the most not the second guy, the first guy, the most interesting man in the world, and said he's a so-called masculine dude. So some of the advertising may go to cater to see these masculine guys. If you're trying to sell this product or this product, they may use the girl for this one. If you look at the Axe commercial, the Axe body wash, and the guys use the Axe body wash, and okay, all these girls come running. You know, so these are just certain examples. So just keep in mind when you're watching television and look at how gender socialization is being mentioned in advertising and how it leads people to believe in, oh, I get some Axe Axe products, or get some Old Spice, masculine dudes. Movies also play a role in shaping gender socialization, not just socialization, but in gender socialization. We have these so-called movies. My father had me grow up watching the war movies, the gangster movies, the shoot 'em up movies, so to say, something blowing up, something shooting. Those were the targets. Give me, Rambo 1, 2, 3, 5, The Expendables, all these characters, the Terminator, all these so-called the Goodfellas, Godfather, all these guy movies. There's just gangs, there's violence, there's shooting stuff blowing up. And the guy's like, hey, man, did you see this new movie, man? Yeah, you see this one came out? Oh, that's going to be good. But then you go into another movie like The Notebook. Great movie, but I had to watch it one time, and I'm like, okay, I'm not used to watching that as an adult. I'm sitting here watching it with someone, and I'm like, oh, wow, there's no violence, there's nothing blowing up. There's no action scene of somebody shooting, not like, Alien with Sigourney Weaver, who plays this role of a woman who has the role of being this lead character who's not afraid, and which is great. I think the guys embrace that and say, okay, yes, it is a woman, but damn, she is really hardcore with this. So when you got movies like Salt, great movie, also Kill Bill, we got tuned into that, and it's just the storyline, not just because it's a woman, but because of the fact that she has an action film with the violence and the blowing up, things like that. So it's not so much for the character, but it's just the movie concept. Guys don't be sitting around, man, you see The Notebook, man? Oh, not the guys I know. Man, that was a good movie. Did y'all see this movie? Oh, man, I cried at the end. That's not so-called masculine with guys. But the ladies can watch, she can watch the same movies. She like the action flicks, but then she might like the love stories as well. So some men don't sit around, let's watch a love story together. That's just part of what the socialization of genders, that we have been socialized in watching movies and expectations of this is what we like and this is what she may like. But the women as well are able to watch, gender neutral movies and say, hey, I like action. I had a woman say, I don't like love stories. And as there's a stereotype that goes with it of this is a male movie, this is a female movie. Video games also teach us lessons in genders, gender socialization. A lot of the female, I'm not a gamer, but a lot of the video games back then were males, and you had females who have dressed like in Street Fighter, the original one, more male characters, but then they come up with video games like Tomb Raider, where there's more female-led characters, and I believe now that some of my students talk about there are more females in video games as well, as a choice of who they want to, what character they want to choose from. They don't want to be the man character; they want to be the woman character, which is cool, and that is more gender neutral friendly. Television also teaches us lessons in genders. As I grew up in the 70s, there were different television shows. We had All in the Family, which Archie Bunker played the role of an individual who political views and his perception of life, and Edith, his wife, Edith Bunker, had the role of a housewife, kind of catering to her husband, sort of say he had the final word, and I'm the boss of the house, and she was just, and there were times where it was funny, and Edith stood up to him, but she had this role of, I'm going to support my husband until I hear something I don't like. And he had the son-in-law who was constantly challenging him, but he had his daughter who had a soft spot. It was very interesting, All in the Family. But television today is a little bit different. I remember watching Love and Hip Hop, no offense to the television show, but if it were to teach lessons in gender, if you had like a 5-year-old boy and girl watch the television series or season or 2 seasons back to back, what are they teaching the lessons in gender for those kids? There are some positive roles in scripts where there are, roles are positive, but then there are some that are controversial where these guys got 4 or 5 different women. These old guys, in my opinion, old guys with 4 or 5 different women, 3 different women, they playing them, trying to be players, so-called to say. And it's just how we teaching lessons in gender. But keep in mind with the mass media and the role of gender socialization. The agents of socialization, these are people groups that affect our self-concept, attitudes, and behaviors or orientations towards life. We're going to speak about them individually. There's the family, which is always the first you meet. You go to school, pick up things from school. Your peers, you learn stuff from your peers. Even as you get in the workplace, you learn stuff in the workplace, and you get into a career, and you're working with a whole diverse, different people of different races, ethnicity, age, religion. Another part of socialization, because you remember it's a continuing process. Religion plays a role, the government, and the mass media. Oh, excuse me. So the family is the first group we have a major impact on us as our family. The first significant others to show us the gender map, as we spoke about before. As a parent, you have to, again, socialize your child to be a member of your family, your culture, as well as a member of society. And as a parent, just say, well, hey, we're from, our family heritage is from another country. Our religion is based upon this. And this is the culture of the family. I have to teach this child to follow the traditions of the culture, as we've spoken before on chapter 3 on culture. You have to socialize this child to learn the culture, but also inside the family itself, even in the household, we have to socialize this child into what the rules of the household is. You know, you have to do this at the house. These are the rules. This is part of the culture of the family. This is one thing from generation to generation. But then there's also next, your child is at the point they leave the home, then they go to school, which brings up one of the main goals is to properly socialize you in school. So the teachers have a great job in trying to socialize children to be functioning members of society. So the child is at home with the parents, not in school, 5 days out the week, traditional school setting, 5 days out the week, for I don't know, 6 to 8 hours a day. So the teachers as adults, they have a role of socializing the children through high school, through grammar school, even through college. We have to properly socialize young people. Your peers, social group whose members have interests, social position, and age in common. Friends, classmates, and kids in the neighborhood. So your peers is where you also learn things from. So there may be something I've learned from my friends that I didn't learn from my parents. I didn't learn from school. We pick up some bad habits from kids, so sometimes our peers, so we have to be careful with our children and make sure, okay, who is this person? Who house you going to? I need to know their parents. I need to know who this kid is, because we want to see that that child is a good influence on your child, not a negative behavior. And unfortunately, a lot of kids get into a lot of trouble from their peers because of the fact that, you know, they've spent so much time with them that they've picked up some of the things that they do. The workplace become socialized by a variety of work environment, different people, different age groups. You begin to learn, especially when you have jobs, people first jobs, second jobs. You learn and say, okay, I'm here for a job. I get paid. I have to follow the rules of the job. Got to be on time. Can't leave work early. You know, I have to be kind to customers. I have to follow the rules, the culture of the company. So therefore, it's another form of socializing you in which you are learning to get prepared for years to come in a work environment, which is very important. Religion, as we briefly spoke about, is an important avenue of socialization based upon the religion and culture. Ethnicity, race, whatever it may be, has to do with religion. Whatever religion you follow, it is also a form of way of socializing you. So therefore, some people may not act right, but that religion played a role in socializing, proper socializing you, and to be a better person. And there's also as a form of way of even passing down this religion from one generation to the next. The government dictates at which we require socialization into a new category, the life course, so there's laws, rules in place. The mass media we just spoke about, people learn about objects of material culture, non-material culture, what is true, beliefs, what is important, values, and what is expected, norms. So these are the agents of socialization. So we got to get into the cold term of resocialization. Again, the language process of learning, but the key word there, you're learning new norms, new values, new attitudes, new behaviors. Again, the process by which one's sense of social values, beliefs, and norms are the key word is re-engineered. It is often deliberately through an intense, keyword is intense, it is a social process that may take place in a total institution. Again, when you look at the word socialization, what is resocialization? Learning new norms, values, attitudes, and behavior. The process by which one's sense of social values, beliefs, and norms are re-engineered, often deliberately through an intense social process that may take place in a total institution. So we're going to go back to this slide. We're going to talk about the next one of a total institution. Total institution from Goffman is an institution in which one is totally immersed and that controls all the basics of day-to-day life. No barriers exist between the usual sphere of daily life, and all activities occur in the same place and under the same single authority. So I look at total institutions, I ask my students, I say, give me an example of a total institution. Immediately, someone would say the military. I think about the definition of a military as an institution, yeah. You're totally immersed and they control all the basics of day-to-day life. Never been in the military, but a friend and family members been in the military. Watched some television shows on military. Okay, that sounds correct. No barriers exist between the usual spirit and daily life, and all activity occurs in the same place and under the same single authority. Military has the same single authority, just chain of command. I asked another example. Another student said jail, prison. Again, it's an institution one is totally immersed in that controls all bases of day-to-day life, which I hope no one would enter. But if you go into a prison, yeah, they control your day-to-day life. No barriers exist between the usual spirit of daily life, and all activities occur in the same place and under the same single authority. Institution, total institutions examples we're going to have is a military and jail. Now, a degradation ceremony is a greeting. Key word, a greeting a person is given when entering a total institution. I didn't say a positive greeting, a great greeting. It's a greeting a person is given when entering a total institution. Now that we know what a total institution is. So it's a greeting a person is given when entering a jail or a prison. Let's use those examples. But it refers to a ritual. Ritual, keyword, whose goal is to remake someone's self by stripping away the individual's self-identity and stamping a new identity in its place. Yes, a degradation ceremony, correct me if I'm wrong, forgive me, from my experience with television and friends, a person who walks into the military is greeted with a degradation ceremony. I know traditionally, I'm not sure about now, the guys would shave their heads, they would be given a uniform, and then they give them nicknames. I think about the movie, the first beginning part of Full Metal Jacket, where the sergeant was giving the guys nicknames, and friends of mine said, yeah, I got cussed out. Was given some nicknames as well. So yeah, they stripped away that person's individual self-identity and stamped a new identity in its place, letting them know you now belong to the Corps. This is what you'll do. You're going to get up in the morning, you're going to do this, you this. They give you a whole new regimen. Resocialization, that is. Degradation ceremony for someone entering a jail. Not a positive greeting a person was given when entering a total institution. It is a ritual whose goal is to remake someone's self by stripping away the individual's self-identity. So therefore, they take away what you have as far as your clothes that you have. They give you a uniform depending on what color, the crimes that you committed, where you're going to be housed at. They also give you an inmate number. So you're not by your name, it's by your inmate number, by stamping a new identity in its place. And as I said, you become state property. So going back to this total institutions and degradation ceremony, so once you enter the total institution, you're greeted with a degradation ceremony. And then you're being resocialized, the process of learning new norms, values, and attitudes and behavior. So now that someone's in military, okay, this is what you do. You have to get up in the morning, you can't do this, your bed has to be made, there's a lot of different rules that go to that. Also with jail, someone in the resocialization process, they learn new norms, values, attitudes, and behaviors. One's sense of social values, beliefs, and norms are re-engineered. That take place in a total institution. So once someone enters a total institution, they are greeted by a degradation ceremony, and they begin the resocialization process. Dramaturgical Theory. Goffman, the view of social life as essentially a theoretical performance in which we are all actors on metaphorical stages with roles, scripts, costumes, and sets. Dramaturgy is a sociological perspective commonly used in micro-sociological accounts of social interaction in everyday life. Key word that stands out to me is this word drama. And I look at dramaturgical theory, first thing I think is drama. And if you look at a metaphorical stage and say, how do people perform on this metaphorical stage? And you look at social life, there's a front and a back stage. Off the back, I ask students, what is the front stage? They say, well, this is the appearance. So this is what someone wants you to think and to believe. So if anyone been in a play, if you've been to a play, curtains open. There's the stage. The actor comes out, actress comes out. They have a certain costume on. This is the setting, where they're at. This is the role that they're playing, and this is the script and what they're reading. This is what happens in the front stage of social life. The backstage, the curtains close to cut the lights down. The actor or actress retreats from their performance. They take a step back, away from the audience, in their own social setting, and they say to themselves, how was my performance? I did the best job I can in this stage. So let's look at the front stage. The front den is the expressive equipment of a standard kind intentionally or unwittingly employed by an individual during this as in his or her performance. During the front stage, the actor formally performs and adheres to conventions that have meaning to the audience. It is part of the dramaturgical performance that is consistent and contains generalized ways to explain the situation or role the actor is playing to the audience that observes it. The actor knows he or she is being watched and acts accordingly. I'm not going to get into this. I know I've had discussions with my students about the front stage, how we want to appear to people. Sometimes kids growing up, me being a father is interesting. You know, the front stage is the perception of when I was a child, how I wanted to be perceived in front of family members of my mother and father. So I put on the front stage about performance, especially if I was trying to go somewhere I had no business going. So I was like, oh, I'm going over here. We're going to go study. I put on this front stage. I had a whole script. Well, we're going to this study group tonight. I have my book bag with me, the costume, and the whole setting. It was a front stage performance. Knowing that's not where I was going to go hang out with friends and stuff like that. But I knew I couldn't get out late, so I had to think of a front stage performance and act accordingly so that I could try to fool my parents. I'm sure they knew what I was doing, but just it was an attempt of a front stage. The backstage is where the performer can relax. He can drop his front before go speaking in his lines and step out of character. Like, get in the car, put my book bag up, say, all right, I'm good. I'm in the backstage now, we driving off. When all is said and done, an individual returns to the backstage, they feel such a sense of relief that they know the actions that would be condoned upon in the front stage are free to be expressed. So you're backstage with your boys, like, man, you know what? I can drop this performance now. All the actions are not to please anyone but themselves in the backstage. Backstage is where performers are present, but the audience is not. And the performers can step out of character without fear of disrupting the performance. So that's dramaturgical theory, front and backstage, but they apply the drama part, being at the theater part, applying it to social life. So I have a few things of social interaction. As I wrap this up a little bit, the status is a recognizable social position that an individual occupies. So you can have more than one status. Status can be right now, it's professional. My other status is I'm a father. So I look at certain things that goes along with a status because you occupy a status, but you play a role. Now the roles are the duties and behaviors expected of someone who holds a particular status. So if you're married, your status is that you're married, and your role is to perform and act like you're married. That don't mean go down to the bar or to the club or take your ring off and hide it. No, don't put it in your pocket. Your status is you're married. You play that role. Now the role strain is the incompatibility among roles corresponding to a single status. And the role conflict is a tension caused by competing demands between two or more roles pertaining to different statuses. So I underline the difference of role strain, the incompatibility among roles corresponding to a single status, and a role conflict is a tension caused by competing demands between two or more roles pertaining to different statuses. Make sure you know the difference between the role strain and the conflict. And remember, you occupy your status and you play the role that accompanies your status. So a status set, all the statuses one holds simultaneously. So for instance, I use just say former President Barack Obama. So he has many statuses. He was an attorney, he's a father, husband, President of the United States, former President of the United States. So there's always a status set. He's hold all those statuses at one time. Now remember, the ascribed status is a status in which one is born. It is involuntary status. So someone who was born into a role of a prince or princess is ascribed status. They have no choice. This is what they're born with. They didn't volunteer for it. You automatically, you were born a prince or a princess. An achieved status is status in which one enters in a voluntary status. So therefore, if someone works their way up to be president of the United States, then that's a different achieved status that you have. If you work your role to be an instructor as far as teaching, if you police officer, whatever you decide to do, is a voluntary status of achievement. And then the master status is one status within the set that stands out or overrides all the others. So you have the main one status that stands out is your master status. So if we go back to the status set, all of the statuses one holds simultaneously. We look at your master status. So just go back to my friend Barack Obama. He has former president of the United States, a lawyer, father, and also husband. But his master status that stands out the most people remember about Barack, where he was the president of the United States as his master status. They wouldn't say his master status was Michelle's husband. No, even though he is. But the master status is the one that stands out or overrides all the others as president. Make sure y'all know this as well. Last slide of the day, Ethnical Methodology. Garfinkel. Literally the method of the people. I just put a lot of definitions so y'all get a better understanding. This approach is to studying human interaction, focus on the way with which we make sense of our world, convey this understanding to others, and produce a shared social order. It is the interest of how the methods and practices of the production and maintenance of this social order. In essence, ethnomethodology attempts to create classification of the social actions of individuals within groups through drawing on the experience of the groups directly without imposing on the setting the opinions of the researcher with regards to social order, as in the case with the sociological studies. So that is my slides for today on Socialization, Chapter 4. Always, students, any questions, feel free to contact me. And you all have a great day.